Hi, I'm Tiffany Sankofa of Sankofa Unbox Coaching and Sankofa Counseling in Piscataway, Garrison, Maryland, and this is this week's blog. Have an ironic MLK Day. In an interview with NBC in 1967, Dr. King said, quote, "I must confess that the dream I had that day has in so many points turned into a nightmare. Now I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. And I've come to see that we have many more difficulties ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is we still have a long way to go." Reading that now and feeling so many similar things here in 2024, I can't help but to think of a quote from actually 1849 by Jean-Baptiste Alphonse Karr. He said, "Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose," which means the more things change, the more they stay the same. This Monday is the day we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. The irony of it also being a day when we inaugurate a president who stands pretty much against everything Dr. King stood for is just, well, I don't even have a word for it. Remaining true to my preferred IndigenousThink ways, I will flood the space with what's good and endeavor to make the rest irrelevant. It is American normal to take our heroes and place them on our illusionary hierarchy of humans, placing those who have done impressive things higher up on the imagined value ladder. We want them to be mythic. We want their accomplishments somehow out of reach for us mere mortals. Again, with the irony. The original hope for MLK Day was to honor his legacy by spending the day serving the community and therefore carrying on the work that he promoted. Just as Dr. King's achievements were about serving people and not about exalting him, so the holiday is intended to get us thinking about how we can carry on the work, striving for equal access and quality of life for all people. Many of the people who present for therapy are what I call the truth-telling troublemakers in a human system, whether it be their families, their faith communities, neighborhoods, on their jobs, in their schools, or what have you. As a truth-telling troublemaker myself, I find it deeply satisfying when my fellow pot stirrers come to own themselves. We make people uncomfortable, importantly uncomfortable. One of the ColonizerThink values embedded into the U.S. national psyche is the idea that we're supposed to be comfortable. When uncomfortable truths come up, there's often all kinds of fierce pushback from those who would prefer comfort to truth, healing, and growth. Let's take a look at the things that Dr. King rallied people to fight for. Just think about this. Equal access to public amenities for all people, which at that time was a direct challenge to the Jim Crow laws that legally enforced treating non-white people as less than human beings. They fought to put an end to unjust practices that effectively blocked qualified citizens' right to vote. Because of this, marginalized people who were blocked from influencing the very pieces of legislation that marginalized them to begin with, Dr. King and those who followed him fought for fair treatment and equal pay in the labor force. They fought for correction of a justice system that intentionally marginalizes people who are not of the cultural dominant. They fought for access to unbiased legal recourse for all people who have been harmed by others. These are not hypothetical ideals or political footballs to be kicked around. Human beings do not live hypothetical lives. I want to invite you to ask yourself, why is it that someone would not be comfortable with treating the entire human family with dignity and respect? Why would someone be uncomfortable with all people having access to the unbiased justice laid out in our country's Constitution? Why would it be problematic for all eligible voters to exercise their right to vote? Why would someone have a problem with equally qualified people in any people wrapper having equal access to jobs, and for compensation for those jobs to be entirely disconnected from ethnicity, gender, political persuasion, religious beliefs, disability status, or any other people wrapper distinction? Why would someone be okay with a system that grossly over-prosecutes some people more than others, and that applies sentencing that is dramatically more harsh for some than for others? Large and powerful people were extremely uncomfortable with the boldness of Dr. King and those he led in discomfiting the comfortable. He was breaking that noxious social rule that, like a gas you can't smell or taste, demands that all things and all people wrap around the comfort of those in power. Dr. King was actively involved in the civil rights movement for only 13 years. In those years, he and his family lived in a state of perpetual threat, actual harm, and danger, prosecution at the hands of those publicly charged to protect the citizenry, and all of this culminating in his assassination at age 39. How is it that the desire for all humans to be treated as humans inspires people to behave like feral animals, fighting for one tiny little scrap of food? We do not live in scarcity in the United States. There are plenty of resources. As Dr. King aptly pointed out again and again, some of us live in want because of the clutchy, constantly competing culture that hoards resources when scared and cuts off access for others in order to maintain their own comfort. When we human folk are scared, even down to our biochemistry, we lose connection to our linear logic. The more afraid we are, the more dangerous our behavior can become. Certain elements in our culture today thrive on keeping us afraid, so that we will either support their power or cede our own. Given all that Dr. King, his family, and his community went through, I'm quite sure they were afraid a lot of the time. However, again and again, we see civil rights activists refusing to buy into that colonizer-think, eat or be eaten mentality. How did they do that? From what I can see, I believe they were able to keep their purpose in front of them. They spoke the truth of human harm and fought for changes that would yield a better world for all. The effort to shift the country out of a state of perpetual harm for so many was more important than keeping themselves from harm in those moments. We're talking about real people. These are not mythical superhuman saints, including Dr. King himself. These had to have been very difficult choices. At times, even the most committed activists drop back from the fight because they're exhausted, because the risks have become too high, or any number of reasons that really aren't our business. This is the power of community. When I need to sleep, you can fight. When you need a rest, I can fight. This kind of collectivistic mentality is the direct antidote to ColonizerThink. This is how we leave behind a culture that eats its own. This is how we create sustainability. This is how we make intelligent choices in the light of truth that all things truly do affect all things. And if you don't believe me, just ask the wolves and trees in Yellowstone Park. I'll put a link to that incredible story below. Trust me, check it out. Lest we think that the need for civil rights for all is some point of ancient history, like all of those things were accomplished, we would do well to recognize that these very same injustices are the ones we are facing today. The means of delivery have changed, but the essential factors remain firmly embedded in our national story. More than that, we remain entrenched in ColonizerThink, which, in all of its terrified clutchiness, will always find or create new means to keep powerful people ever more powerful at the expense of literally the stability of the planet and the people. This is literally what the United States was founded on. If we consume ourselves with trying to address each and every injustice, we're going to be ineffective and we're going to burn out. What if instead, each of us figures out what issues we have passion, fight, ideas, and or resources to contribute to? Then we can study the deeper history of those issues, trying to firmly understand how we got where we are today, and then also discern foundationally what needs to change in order to heal it. Those are your marching orders. This kind of focus doesn't mean you don't care about the other issues. It means that you are choosing to be effective. Encourage and support others who are doing the work in other areas, as well as those who are doing the work you are doing. Stay focused on what's yours and do it to your very best ability. Let's flood the space with what's good at every level. Let's make ColonizerThink irrelevant. Build connection and community. Let go of the things that are not yours to do. Make sustainable changes that consider the balance of all things wherever you can. and go have yourself an ironic MLK Day. By the way, if you'd like help finding your balance and the places where you can make what civil rights activist John Lewis called good trouble, contact me today. There's a link down below. Let's take inventory of your gifts and passions and refine how you can use them for good. All right, this is Tiffany Sankofa, and I will be back at another time, hopefully very soon. In the meantime, take very good care of yourself. Care well for others. Go find some fun. And go Ravens! Yes!